stage at Bonnaroo Festival in Manchester, Tennessee, and become an object of great fascination to almost no one. The dazed crowd will drift back and forth across the fields, and the sinking sun will flood the site with orange fire. After the show, I will sit outside on the steps of our trailer and smoke. On the way back to Nashville, our van will be stalled on the highway for 2 hours at the scene of a terrible automobile accident. We will watch as ambulances and police cars speed down the slip roads. We will see a helicopter chopping above us, its searchlight cutting through the dark night. For an hour, we will sit silently in our van, smoking and drinking. Eventually, our tour manager will leave the vehicle to investigate. He will come back to report that 2 vehicles have collided up ahead and a girl lies decapitated on the road. I will fall asleep in the back of the van, waking up when our vehicle begins to move. From the slow-moving side window, I will see the decapitated body lying on the road, covered by a grim, bulging blue plastic sheet. I will picket a thread in my jacket sleeve all the way back to the Sheraton in downtown Nashville. Pick, pick, pick. An angel will unfold its wings and speak into my ear. You must take the first step alone. Then the angel will nudge me and send me sailing out into the unknown. This is how I will begin the Sick Bag song. Thank you.
I suppose we should do first things first. Could you tell us how this came about? You were writing on sick bags in airplanes.
Yeah. Do you do that?
I have done that, but
I think
now I wish I'd made it a religious practice.
Well, you know, it's I wanted to try and write a whole lot of songs on the tour, and there's a kind of greater wisdom about being on a tour that you can't do anything other than the actual gig. The rest of the time you just sit there and you wait for this moment. It's impossible to write or to do anything other than that. Right? And so
You've always found that's true, have you?
I've accepted that. I've accepted that. And I thought I was having some kind of problems writing some new songs for the new record, and I thought that I'd try and write 10 songs on this tour, and I thought that if I said it loud enough and with enough determination, it might actually happen, and I'd come back from this tour not only having done the American tour but also having 10 songs. And I was on the flight to Nashville, which was the first town. I thought, all right, I'm going to write these fucking songs. And I grabbed a sick bag, which was a piece of blank paper, and started to write what I thought would be the first of the songs. And kind of like the way I called it the Sick Bag song because I didn't know what I was going to write a song about. And eventually I took another flight and wrote more on it. And eventually this thing started to happen where the songs disappeared and this sort of larger piece started to be written.
I was talking to your publisher, Jamie, on the phone earlier on, and he said the first thing he knew about this was when a scan or an image of one of these sick bags turned up on email with not very much context or explanation. When did you start? Were you just hating it?
Well, no, not really. He's been badgering me to write something for a while, as he does. As he's well known for. This is Jamie Byng, a notorious British publisher of Canongate. And I sent him a picture of the sick bag, the first one, which had some sort of scribbles on the name, and I said, I'm writing this thing, I don't know what it is, it's written on sick bags, will you publish it?
He's the guy who would just go, yes please.
Well, he wrote back saying that perhaps the idea needs a little more fleshing out. But yes.
And so when did it go from being, I mean, the way he told it to me was that the initial idea between the two of you was that it was going to be quite rigorously conceptual. It might be an art book that just had these 22 whatever sick bags reproduced on the page. When did you decide to move from that into using them effectively as drafts for this long poem?
Actually, I think an artist, Sue Webster, may be in the audience tonight. You are? I'm sorry about this. I'll apologise to you right now. But we had this idea a year or two ago where she and her partner at the time, Tim Noble, did the cover for Dig Lazarus Dig, and we had this idea that we would do a kind of an art thing of using sick bags, and I'd write lyrics and they would do they would draw something, we would exhibit them together and make a whole lot of money. Because she was in the art world, and it seemed like a great idea at the time. And so the second person I rang after Jamie was Sue. I don't know if you remember this, Sue. And you said, that's a great idea, let's do it, but you never got back to me. So in the end I thought, well, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And there you go. So I'll make that a kind of public apology to you now.
And it's a road trip. I mean, this is the most classical American form, and throughout your life as an artist, you've engaged with America. I mean, I wonder, even as a boy growing up in Australia, did America mean something to you as an idea or as a source of inspiration?
Well, totally. I mean, it wasn't that America, that it was American. We just absorbed American culture because all the TV, we didn't really have Australian TV as such. All we had was American TV shows as a kid. So it was something that I didn't think of as American. I just thought it was Australian, actually. In a kind of a way. As a kid, it was just the stuff we used to watch, the sort of stuff we used to watch on TV. I Dream of Jeannie.
I'm quite interested on a more sort of mythic level. It's interesting. There seems to be an Australian identification with the Western and the Western United States. I mean, there's a bunch of Australian directors making kind of tough-minded westerns in Hollywood right now, and I mean, I can make a guess as to why Australians identify with that sort of pioneer spirit. I mean, is it as straightforward as that?
Well, we have the landscape, and we have this backstory. We have the genocide. And we have a lot of similar things going on. We just don't have the film industry. So but for sure, American films and that kind of American film had a huge impact over me as a kid and over the Australian film.
And when did I think of you as somebody who probably read a lot of Faulkner at some point in your life, and also, I mean, you become known as somebody who's taken the form of the murder ballad, another classic American lyric form, and made that new. I mean, when did you first become aware of that kind of canon of folk songs and that kind of?
Oh, in my early 20s, I guess. It wasn't something that we really grew up with. I grew up with country music, in the sense that I liked American country music, but I was quite alone in that, actually. American country music wasn't big in Australia in particular. American country music was big in Germany, for example. But Australia, we had our own kind of country and our own sort of Australian type of country music. But I always liked a lot of the country and western stuff. I mean, the middle of the road country and western stuff, Cammy Winnett, that kind of stuff.
And was that a route through where you found this kind of darker material?
Yeah, I mean, the murder ballads thing really came from not so much the ballads themselves, but from reading them. And I remember when I was quite, I think the first time I went to America, someone gave me this wonderful book called Murder Ballads, or The Murder Ballad, or something like that, which was an anthology of American murder ballads. And that had a big influence on me.
I don't know, I asked partly because, I use this phrase in my intro that this is a visionary poem, and there's something hallucinatory about it, and there's something that's invoking the spirits of America of North America as you cross the continent. And my first exposure to some of those things was through Harry Smith's anthology of American folk music, which also comes, I don't know if people know this, it's a late 50s or early, I think it's late 50s he put it out. It's a collector in New York who collected all these old 78s together and kind of refound this tradition of music, but also was very interested in magic and was interested in a kind of what Graham Parsons would call cosmic American music. And in this poem, and I'm calling it a poem, in this text, and in your work more generally, you pick up on these sort of spirits and this kind of...
I mean, we were talking backstage about Ginsberg.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I was swearing I would not.
Yeah,
I would not say that on stage.
And Kerouac and stuff like that. That stuff, for me, I couldn't stand that stuff.
Why? Because so many people love it.
I know, and I kind of am growing to like it more. Not Kerouac, but Ginsberg. But it was just something that I couldn't relate to. It was just this kind of, I mean, it comes up in this, but it's this regurgitating, everyone rolling around in the leaves and
so this is a
knowing each other's armpits. And it came from Whitman and all of that sort of stuff, and I never really got that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't read enough of it, so I didn't really see the humour and all actually the wonderful things in Ginsberg. But the poem that really blew me away as an 18 or 19-year-old was a poem, or a book actually, by Michael Ondaatje called Billy the Kid, the Left-Handed Poet. Do you know that?
I love that book, yeah.
Okay, so that was the telling of the story of Billy the Kid through a kind of prose poetry, a kind of mash-up.
Isn't it? Lots of different styles and lots of different ways of approaching this story.
And he then did it with Buddy Bolden, the jazz trumpeter. And these books had a huge impact on me. And it was the first time that I really became engaged properly, other than the stuff that you had to read at school really, but really engaged properly in poetry. And there was something about the way that he writes poetry that goes from these vast, he's Canadian, right? Writing about America. These vast sweeps, and then telescoping into these kind of incredibly violent, small details about things. These very violent,
very specific and very concrete
violent images. And that, I think that's always had a huge impact on the way I've written songs in general, actually. And I think on some level it's had a big impact on that.
I mean, what about the sort of the mythic thing? At one point, maybe the Edmonton section, you write, mythology bubbled up around me like melted plastic. And in this work, there's always this kind of, everything's always a bit bilious, everything's always about to be sicked up in this. But the mythology is always there. And was that always a way you tried to write? Were you always trying to access the music?
You mean writing in general?
In general, yeah.
It's about inflating the small. To me, it's about inflating small ideas into things that are mythic and grand and larger than life. And I think that's basically the way that I write songs and continue to write songs. I know I can locate at the base of each of the songs that I've written the small gesture or the small thing that's happened to me My wife certainly can also find out that the thing that's written about, the small thing that exists at the beginning of the song that is then inflated into kind of slightly hysterical and mythic.
And will that always be verbal, or will that, you know, is it a phrase, or is it a word that starts off a piece of you?
No, it's trying to talk about something. Well, it can be. I guess it can be as small as a gesture or a word up to it. You know.
So when you say a gesture, I mean, it can be something you're trying to capture that's not verbal, that's not.
You know, like an indefinable moment between two people, let's say, that gets through hard work and a certain amount of magic, I guess, gets turned into something that is something else and something more interesting.
And with this work, I mean, obviously it's got the unity of the tour. That's a very easy frame for something to be hung on. But you've done a million tours. You know, why did this tour kind of start to hang together as a thing that needed to end up between two?
It was to do with America itself, North America, and how much I love America, how much I've, especially as I've grown older, liked it more and more, and accepted it more and more, and accepted America for what it is, for all its contradictions. You know, and it's genuinely an exciting experience to go on tour in America. I mean, I've toured Europe many times, and I know it, and I know it, and I know it. But there's something that seems to be, there's still a kind of great excitement with the band to go to America, still.
Why is it different?
It's
Germany.
Extraordinary.
You can tell that's a New York crowd as well. You say a line like that and they're like, yeah.
I'll read another bit, shall I?
Why don't you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this other mic goes on. This one's a section that's written from the Denver, from being in Denver.
Hi. Hello.
I suppose we should do first things first. Could you tell us how this came about? You were writing on sick bags and airplanes.
Yeah. Do you do that?
I have done that, but
I think
now I wish I'd made it a religious practice.
Well, you know, it's I wanted to try and write a whole lot of songs on the tour, and there's a kind of greater wisdom about being on a tour that you can't do anything other than the actual gig. The rest of the time you just sit there and you wait for this moment. It's impossible to write or to do anything other than that. And so
You've always found that's true, have you?
I've accepted that.
Right.
I've accepted that. And I thought I was having some kind of problems writing some new songs for the new record, and I thought that I'd try and write 10 songs on this tour, and I thought that if I said it loud enough and with enough determination, it might actually happen, and I'd come back from this tour not only having done the American tour but also having 10 songs. And I was on the flight to Nashville, which was the first town. I thought, all right, I'm going to write these fucking songs. And I grabbed a sick bag, which was a piece of blank paper, and started to write what I thought would be the first of the songs. And kind of like the way I called it the sick bag song, because I didn't know what I was going to write a song about. And eventually I took another flight and wrote more on it, and eventually this thing started to happen where the songs disappeared and this sort of larger piece started to be written.
I was talking to your publisher, Jamie, on the phone earlier on, and he said the first thing he knew about this was when a scan or an image of one of these sick bags turned up on email with not very much context or explanation. When did you start? Are we just hating it?
Well, no, not really. He's been badgering me to write something for a while, as he does, as he's well known for. This is Jamie Bing, notorious British publisher of Canongate, and I sent him a picture of the sick bag, the first one, which had some sort of scribbles on the name, and I said, I'm writing this thing, I don't know what it is, it's written on sick bags, will you publish it?
He's the guy who would just go, yes please.
Well, he wrote back saying that perhaps the idea needs a little more fleshing out, but yes.
And so when did it go from being, I mean, the way he told it to me was that the initial idea between the two of you was that it was going to be quite rigorously conceptual. It might be an art book that just had these 22 or whatever sick bags reproduced on the page. When did you decide to move from that into using them effectively as drafts for this long poem?
Actually, I think an artist, Sue Webster, may be in the audience tonight. You are? I'm sorry about this, I'll apologise to you right now. But we had this idea a year or two ago where she and her partner at the time, Tim Noble, did the cover for Dig Lazarus Dig, and we had this idea that we would do a kind of an art thing of using sick bags, and I'd write lyrics and they would do they would draw something, we would exhibit them together and make a whole lot of money. Because she was in the art world, and it seemed like a great idea at the time. And so the second person I rang after Jamie was Sue. I don't know if you remember this, Sue, and you said that's a great idea, let's do it, but you never got back to me. So in the end I thought, well, fuck it, I'll do it myself. And there you go. So I'll make that a kind of public apology to you now.
And it's a road trip. I mean, this is the most classical American form, and throughout your life as an artist, you've engaged with America. I mean, I wonder, even as a boy growing up in Australia, did America mean something to you as an idea or as a source of inspiration?
Totally. I mean, it wasn't that America, that it was American. We just absorbed American culture because all the TV, we didn't really have Australian TV as such. All we had was American TV shows as a kid. So it was something that I didn't think of as American. I just thought it was Australian, actually. In a kind of a way. As a kid, it was just the stuff we used to watch. The stuff we used to watch on TV. I Dream of Jeannie.
I mean, I'm quite interested on a more sort of mythic level. It's interesting. There seems to be an Australian identification with the Western and the Western United States. I mean, there's a bunch of Australian directors making kind of tough-minded Westerns in Hollywood right now, and I mean, I can make a guess as to why Australians identify with that sort of pioneer spirit. I mean, is it as straightforward as that?
Well, we have the landscape, and we have this backstory, we have the genocide, and we have a lot of similar things going on. We just don't have the film industry, so but for sure, American films and that kind of American film had a huge impact over me as a kid and over the Australian film.
And when did I think of you as somebody who probably read a lot of Faulkner at some point in your life, and also, I mean, you become known as somebody who's taken the form of the murder ballad, another classic lyric form and make that new. I mean, when did you first become aware of that kind of canon of folk songs and that kind of?
Oh, in my early 20s, I guess. It wasn't something that we really grew up with. I grew up with country music, in the sense that I liked American country music, but I was quite alone in that, actually. American country music wasn't big in Australia in particular. American country music was big in Germany, for example. But Australia, we had our own kind of country and our own sort of Australian type of country music. But I always liked a lot of that, the country and western stuff. I mean, the middle of the road country and western stuff, Tammy Wynette, that kind of stuff.
And was that a route through it where you found this kind of darker material?
Yeah, I mean, the murder ballads thing really came from not so much the ballads themselves, but from reading them. And I remember when I was quite, I think the first time I went to America, someone gave me this wonderful book called Murder Ballads, or The Murder Ballad, or something like that, which was an anthology of American murder ballads. And that had a big influence on me.
I don't know, I asked partly because, I use this phrase in my intro that this is a visionary poem, and there's something hallucinatory about it, and there's something that's invoking the spirits of America of North America as you cross the continent. And my first exposure to some of those things was through Harry Smith's anthology of American folk music, which also comes, I don't know if people know this, it's a late 50s or early, I think late 50s he put it out. It's a collector in New York who collected all these old 78s together and kind of refound this tradition of music, but also was very interested in magic and was interested in a kind of what Graham Parsons would call cosmic American music. And in this poem, and I'm calling it a poem, in this text, and in your work more generally, you pick up on these sort of spirits and this kind of...
I mean, we were talking backstage about Ginsberg.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I was swearing I would not.
Yeah,
I would not say that on stage.
And Kerouac and stuff like that. That stuff, for me, I couldn't stand that stuff.
Why? Because so many people love it.
I know, and I kind of am growing to like it more. Not Kerouac, but Ginsberg. But it was just something that I couldn't relate to. It was just this kind of, I mean, it comes up in this, but it's this regurgitating, everyone rolling around in the leaves and
so this is a pumpkin.
knowing each other's armpits. And it came from Whitman and all of that sort of stuff, and I never really got that. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't read enough of it, so I didn't really see the humour and all actually the wonderful things in Ginsberg. But the poem that really blew me away as an 18 or 19-year-old was a poem, or a book actually, by Michael Ondaatje called Billy the Kid, the Left-Handed Poet. Do you know that?
I love that book, yeah.
Okay, so that was the telling of the story of Billy the Kid through a kind of prose poetry, a kind of mashup.
Lots of different styles and lots of different ways of approaching this story. And
he then did it with Buddy Bolin, the jazz trumpeter, and these books had a huge impact on me. And it was the first time that I really became engaged properly, other than the stuff that you had to read at school, really, but really engaged properly in poetry. And there was something about the way that he writes poetry that goes from these vast, he's Canadian, right? Mm-hmm. Writing about America. These vast sweeps, and then telescoping into these kind of incredibly violent, small details about things. These very violent,
very specific and very concrete
violent images. And that, I think that's always had a huge impact on the way I've written songs in general, actually. And I think on some level it's had a big impact on that.
I mean, what about the sort of the mythic thing? At one point, maybe the Edmonton section, you write, mythology bubbled up around me like melted plastic. And in this work, there's always this kind of, everything's always a bit bilious, everything's always about to be sicked up.
Yeah.
And it's, but the mythology is always there. And was that always a way you tried to write? Were you always trying to access the music?
You mean my writing in general?
In general, yeah.
You know, it's about inflating the small. To me, it's about inflating small ideas into things that are mythic and grand and larger than life. And I think that's basically the way that I write songs and continue to write songs. I know I can locate at the base of each of the songs that I've written the small gesture or the small thing that's happened to me. My wife certainly can also find out that the thing that's written about, the small thing that exists at the beginning of the song that is then inflated into kind of slightly hysterical and mythic.
And will that always be verbal, or will that, you know, is it a phrase or is it a word that starts off a piece of you?
No, it's trying to talk about something. Well, it can be. I guess it can be as small as a gesture or a word up to it. You know.
So when you say a gesture, I mean, it can be something you're trying to capture that's not verbal, that's not.
You know, like an indefinable moment between two people, let's say, that gets through hard work and a certain amount of magic, I guess, gets turned into something that is something else and something more interesting.
And with this work, I mean, obviously it's got the unity of the tour. That's a very easy frame for something to be hung on. But you've done a million tours. You know, why did this tour kind of start to hang together as a thing that needed to end up between two?
It was to do with America itself, North America, and how much I love America, how much I've, especially as I've grown older, liked it more and more and accepted it more and more and accepted America for what it is, for all its contradictions. You know, and it's genuinely an exciting experience to go on tour in America. I mean, I've toured Europe many times, and I know it, and I know it, and I know it. But there's something that seems to be, there's still a kind of great excitement with the band to go to America, still.
Why is it different? Driving in the freeways to Germany. You can tell that's a New York crowd as well. You say a line like that and they're like, yeah.
I'll read another bit, shall I?
Why don't you do that?
Yeah.
Okay, so this other mic goes on. This one's a section that's written from the Denver, from being in Denver. In Denver, I buy a lovely little book by Patti Smith called Wool Gathering. It's the bride. And she writes, Patti Smith writes, about having possessed a kind of knapsack full of souvenirs. A ruby, a spoon, the insides of a walkie-talkie. It's a lovely thing to read under a blue sky on a bench in Colfax Street in Denver. Right on, Patty. I pick her up by her braids and I drop her into my sick bag. I look inside. I can see a tiny Gertrude Stein and a little Emily Dickinson. I can see a miniature Philip Larkin pushing a lawnmower and a little wrinkly W.H. Auden. I can see a pygmy dressed as John Berryman with a bone through his nose, and loads of other people too. A small-scale late-period Elvis, a tiny John Lee Hooker with stars and striped socks, a crazy little James Brown, and a bent-backed Hank Williams in a resistol rancher hat. These are the lollipop ladies, with their severed heads on pikes, shepherding me across these lost and lonely highways and into your arms tonight. And in a dark, dejected corner of my sick bag sits a tiny Brian Ferry in a pair of blue swimming trunks in West Sussex in the summer of 2000. The stretched sky was blue and so hot my wife was sick with it. She was 8 months pregnant with the twins, swollen and gasping for air, unrecognisable from the willowy woman I had married a year ago. She stepped out of the car, a beautiful elephant of woe, stepped out and onto Brian Ferry's driveway. My wife and I had come to visit Lucy Ferry. Brian was away on business. I was relieved. Who wants to meet their childhood heroes? Lucy showed us around the grounds. We saw the walled garden all in bloom. We saw the orchard full of apples. We saw the swallows and the martins. We saw the falling horse prancing in the fields. In the noonday sun, the women were as white as snowflakes. I drifted away and found a swimming pool surrounded by a high hedge. I took off my jacket and sat down on a lounger under an umbrella and fell asleep. I awoke to find Brian Ferry in his bathers standing in the swimming pool. He was white and handsome and very still. I haven't written a song for years, he said. Why? What's wrong with you? I said. He gestured with an uncertain hand all about him. There is nothing to write about, he said. Then he pushed off into the water. That night, I sat at my desk writing in a frenzy, page upon page, song after song. I couldn't stop, but weeping too, hot sobbing tears pouring down my cheeks. Hey, what's the matter, baby? Said my wife, propped up in bed. I'm a fucking vampire, I cried, thinking of Brian Ferry and his bursting flowers and his prancing horses and his flight of swallows and his hedge swimming pool and his lovely wife. No, you're not. Come here, she said. I crawled under the bed and she pulled the sheet away. Listen, she said. I put my ear against her distended stomach, her knapsack, and listened. I could hear little trapped people swimming around. They are eating me from the inside. Lucky them, I said. I'm serious, she said. But she had fallen asleep, and I crawled off the bed, across the floor, up the wainscot, and along the panelled ceiling. I pressed my ear to the ceiling and listened. I could hear people gathering on the floor above. The ceiling vibrated. I recognized the voices as past collaborators going back many years. They sounded fatigued, as if depleted of oxygen, maybe, or as if someone had siphoned their blood away. I could hear them sobbing and cursing and consoling each other. I fell asleep.
So, Brian Ferry.
Yeah. Are you a fan?
I'm quite a partisan for Adina when it comes to who was best in Roxy, but that's another day. But I'm glad you read that section in the essay, because to me that's at the heart of the Sick Bag song. This moment where you see this man who has everything. He has this country house. He has this extraordinary, bucolic, and perfected life, and he turns to you and he says, I'm not making art. And your response is this sort of manic, almost sort of neurotic creativity, and I'm interested in you know why it was so scary to you. Is being content a bit scary creatively for you?
I was, you know, I mean that actually happened for one thing. Things in here, there are things that don't happen. I'm not actually a vampire and stuff.
worth underscoring that.
Yeah. But the Brian Ferry story happened exactly as that is said, and I guess on some level that terrified me because I wanted to be in this thing for the long haul, and from all accounts it's a very difficult thing to maintain, especially in rock and roll, to maintain some kind of quality and some continuing invention of what you do. It's very difficult, and for me I think the way to do that is, even though we may find our own voice and all of that sort of stuff, is very much to stay open to our influences and to continue to be influenced by people, and never to be satisfied with that particular voice that you may have developed.
So was it his you know, he's in a sort of walled garden almost, was it his closed offness that was scary to you, or was it more his contentment or his placidity?
I mean, I wouldn't like to say.
I mean, not asking what his actual situation is, but at that moment for you, he represented something.
I just felt so inspired with his house at that time. I was a lot younger. I was in this amazing place, and his garden. You've got to see this garden. Like, it was incredible, and his wife was beautiful, and you know, there was just all this sort of stuff to write about, and there was just this doomed kind of quality to this moment that we had that I found quite terrifying.
I'm interested in the figure of the vampire in the Sick Bag song, because there's this moment where you're terrified that you're a vampire, and I mean, to me, I half read that as maybe you felt that you'd taken something from Ferry, and you know, you drunk his blood, and this was what was coming out on the page in this outburst of creativity. And then there's another scene where...
I'll read that.
Okay, we'll
But there is definitely a kind of riff on creative vampirism, and everybody kind of feeding off everybody else.
And I mean, and the idea and a sort of meditation on what it is to be creative, and the banal things that stop people being creative is a lot of what this is about. There are these wonderful lists of things that can prevent you from making work. You know, ranging from the internet not working to the internet working. And there was 9 in those lists. And is that for the muses, or is that for other reasons?
Well,
9 turns up.
9 turns up, and so there's endless lists of 9 things, and it just ended up that way. I don't really need to go into that much, because there isn't really much of a reason, but except there were the 9 muses that start. But there are 9 primary. Whatever. Anyway, you got to read. Well, there's actually 9 primary, 9 secondary, 9 tertiary, whatever the 9.
Quaternary, I believe you get. I should. Good work.
9 primary bedevilments of creativity. That's what it is, and they start off from the big stuff through to the little stuff, through to decapitation
and really much about. So there you are. I mean, this figure who moves through the Sick Bag song, who's this sort of version of you, and you know, is you and isn't you, and is surrounded by. I call them ghosts, really, and the chief of goes is this boy to whom the book is dedicated, and we saw some of that in the little film that was shown at the beginning. And this boy on the bridge, you said a little bit more about him and why he seems to function as a sort of double for you.
Well, he's actually talked about him in 20,000 Days, which is a memory of myself as a child, which is a true memory, and it's also a embellished memory, or a kind of practice memory, or something like that. But it is a boy that runs across the bridge and stands on the bridge and waits for the train to come, and then to jump off at a particular time. But he's never done it before, and he's never seen anybody do it before. And I guess it becomes a kind of metaphor that runs through a lot of different things, the idea of jumping, falling.
Because there's another figure that the narrator meets, this girl who's sort of standing on the rail of various bridges, and this kind of, he gets into conversation with as well. So, I mean, is that something to do with creativity as well? Is this taking a leap in that sense?
The poem itself is also about my own about performance as well, and that idea of walking on the stage and walking up the front and not really knowing what's going to happen, and not really having that much control over the situation, and literally actually sometimes, but falling, and sometimes, and I guess the difference between flying and falling, and we talk about John Berryman in there, who's such a massive influence over me.
Say a little bit more about John Berryman, because
well,
I think you should sell a few copies of James Songs as well.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a book I saw the cover of and loved. I didn't know anything about Berryman for years. I was reading his James Songs, I don't know, 20 years ago or something like that, which I never really understood.
They're hard poems.
Yeah, they're very difficult to decode until at some point I had read them so much I just understood his language and the way he went about things, and actually they become a lot simpler once you sort of know that you've read them enough. They start to unlock, and they're very funny, and but there was this mystery to this language of the not knowing that had such an impact on me, back in the day.
So the idea of the mystery of the...
Well, just knowing that there was something wonderful within the kind of framework of these incredible words that you use, and these incredible images, that I knew that wasn't just some sort of babble talk, let's say. Caroline. There was something that was actually going on there that was actually very, very meaningful within the kind of
context.
Within these 16 lines, I don't know, of each dream song, whatever, that are kind of imprisoned in these words. And I think over the years I've just sort of found great, a lot of comfort and from these particular poems.
I mean, the other poet that I would think of in terms of a sort of narrator kind of being surrounded by these spirits and angels of a place is Blake. Has Blake ever meant anything to you?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sure. Yeah, we were kind of had a lot of that at school, and I actually had a guy who could explain that stuff and make some sort of sense out of it, and so I like that stuff at school.
I mean, I suppose your father was an English literature teacher, wasn't he? So I mean, but that guy was not your dad. That was someone else.
No. He was a Shakespeare.
That was his thing. And one of the reasons this poem works so well is that, I mean, in a way, it's how, if I'm making a piece of writing myself, it's how I judge whether it's working or not, is whether everything starts folding back and everything starts giving more and more the more you do with it. And I was interested to see how the sick bags themselves start off as they're just the paper that you're working on, then that it starts to weave itself into the poem. The idea of this. What, I mean, you should say, what are you vomiting out? You're often keeping things in this bag.
It's full of people and
influences.
And influences. Yeah, I mean, so I think there's a line of it's sort of everything I love and loathe or something is in the sick bag, and it's part of the dramatic tension. It's in a burst. But you know, there's a songwriting thing that goes on with, that I've learned through songwriting is through repetition and the repetition of choruses and all of that sort of stuff. That when you're actually singing a song, how they can inform each other as the song goes on, and the song becomes more and more powerful. Not just by melody, but by the repeating of words and all of that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot of kind of songwriting stuff I've learned over the years that's in that way.
Because often as I was reading it, I realised that it was always teetering into the lyric, into song rhymes and turning up in a way that seemed completely unforced. And you say at one point, I am a nervous system that runs on rhyme and ghosts, and that would be, these are the two things we've just been speaking of.
Shall we
go again?
There's a little film, I think it's now, is that right? That Ian and Jane made especially for New York, which has a section from the chapter on New York. So it should.
There are those who work so they can stop. Stopping is the why of work. There are those who stop so they can work. Working is the why of work. I lie on my bed in the Bowery Hotel, New York City, my muse's decollated head nestled in my lap, going lap, 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 while I think of Sharon Olds, who wrote the best fellatio poems ever put to the page. She writes a lot of other great things as well. Leonard Cohen had a shot with Chelsea Hotel, and of course Lou Reed's Sister Ray, and Auden's Horn Yawn, The Platonic Blow. But none come close to the dazzling Sharon Olds. This is how the night unfolds. I peer through a crack in Sharon Olds' closet with my sick bag song ready to blow. I could only say that it was nice, and I told my muse so. Later, I throw my Bowery window wide. Up in the far right corner of the sky, a rain cloud shaped like Elvis's severed head cries itself. And all across New York City, it pours beaded curtains of dewdrop jewels, and rivers of ordinary love songs wash down the gutters and fill the bird baths, the fountains, and the swimming pools. And from the bar below, Nina Simone pounds the elephant ivory, the Canadian maple, and the strangling wire, while up and down the hotel halls, the singing skeleton of Karen Carpenter glides and calls. And as Roy Orbison deeply mines the cut diamonds of solid sound, we begin to see a ghastly band. Karen Dalton dangles on the wings of sound. Hank Williams tilts to the side in the back of a powder blue Cadillac, and Lou Reed's face appears on a napkin in a bar in Long Island. Let the world know that they worked to the end with love, for there are those poor things who never start. Let the world know they knew the why of goodbye, that in love we often must depart. Yes, in love we often must depart. We will drown, poor things, in tears tonight, but I gotta get an early start to do 12 on a Delta flight.
No, no.
Does anyone know Sharon Holtz? She's great. And she, I don't know, I only started reading her a couple of years ago, but she's been writing, I don't know, to be honest, from the 70s or something like that to wonderful book to the present day. But anyway, they are something else.
I shall go out.
And she writes great poems about, well, giving blowjobs. But she writes a lot of other stuff as well.
Here's a link. You know, what is one of the pleasures of your songwriting, and is that you write love songs and you write frankly sexual songs, and you do that well, which is very, very unusual. And another part of the atmosphere of the sick bag song is is to do with missing your wife and her not picking up the phone. Could you say a little more about the sort of sexual atmosphere of the phone?
The great sort of dramatic engine that runs through the sick bag song is my wife refuses to pick up the telephone.
Is this a general thing, or is this just
throughout
a thing that happens?
Well, throughout the tour, and this escalates into she just hasn't picked up the telephone. But my response to the fact that she's not picking up the telephone becomes greater and greater as the tour continues. And then I guess through I start to remember things that were happening before I actually left that start to impact upon my feelings of horror.
And there are all these sort of ghostly encounters with her and the muses or the muse that turns up, as well as you saying no to some nice Texan ladies as well, that turns up. Although you clearly had nice legs. That's enough beer.
They had, that's Austin, if you want to read that.
That sounds slightly scary. It seems like there's a large number of hens on their hen night, and they want themselves a piece of wandering rock band.
You've got to read it.
Yeah.
It's actually better than that.
Selling it short. This is supposed to be our short conversation or section, according to the running order. And
you're like, I'm following you.
I'm following you
in terms
of time. Well, I think we've got a little bit of time, but not lots of time. I'd like to talk about the sources of some of your language throughout all your writing. And one of those sources is the Bible and the King James Bible, and maybe you can say a little bit about what that has meant to you.
If we can, I was talking about this, but the Bible, for better or for worse, just sort of lodged itself in my brain, and I read it a lot when I was in my mid-20s or something like that. I just got really into reading it. I was taking a lot of drugs at the time, which didn't help, and I got to know it.
Wrote it from
Yeah, I got to know it quite well, and and it does sort of seem to sort of hover over a lot of stuff that I love.
Because there's a prophetic tone that you take on as a sort of figure on stage. You become a channel for something mighty and
it's
violent.
in the sense of irony, though. I love that.
You clearly do have a sense of humour. That's true.
The other thing that the book is and it's supposed to look like one as well, is a kind of a motivational manual, or to have this sort of idea of a motivational manual. And increasingly, right up to having this ridiculous little microphone stuck on the side of your face, as some kind of motivational speaker or something like that. And there's this kind of this ironic voice that runs through it.
Say that, because you mentioned that stuff several times in the book. And I think one of the bedevilments of creativity is something to do with getting sidetracked by reading self-help. And
12-step program.
Do you go to that place, the self-help place?
No, I don't. But I guess the main thing that's happening through the sick bag song is there is a boy on a bridge deciding whether he wants to jump or not, or whether he's just going to go and run back down, and not jump or jump, and I guess that reverberates throughout the book, sometimes ironically when it manifests itself in a kind of into motivational speak.
I think with that, I should cue you up for another episode of vampirism.
No.
Is it not?
There's not. Yeah, there's
Oh, that's the very.
There's one at the end of that. Okay. This is, we went to Canada, and this is written in Edmonton, which is a town in Canada. It was news to me. Okay. This is after the gig. That night, our work done, we rolled out of the Jubilee, down the valley and swam around in the Saskatchewan, then partied with some comely Canadian fur traders, like it was 1791. Mythology bubbles up about me like melted plastic. I sit alone on the bank of the glacial Saskatchewan beside a low-lying bridge, picking at a thread in my jacket sleeve. Pick, pick, pick. I strip off my reeking sick bag suit and rinse it in the river. Wash away the Fairmont Hotel McDonald's dry cleaning services toxins all the way to Lake Winnipeg. And naked, I drift into a sort of reverie. I remember the disastrous events from the town of my youth. The boy who accidentally shot and killed his brother in the street next to ours. The boy who had a fatal allergic reaction to multiple bee stings. The old dead man we found in a gully on the way to school. But mostly I remember what my mother and father told me about the boy who had died jumping off the railway bridge. He had hit the concrete pylon support that lay submerged beneath the water and was knocked unconscious. He drowned. He was found a couple of days later tangled in the branches of a half-felled tree. Mostly I remembered that. I lit a cigarette and resting there on the bank stare out across the dark moonlit river and wonder how many memories I have mislaid along the way and whether they will be ever retrieved. Without warning, I'm overwhelmed by a particular kind of sorrow, swollen and hard in my chest, that is reserved for the loss of something both utterly precious and entirely illusory, and my eyes well with tears that spill down my cheeks. I stay that way for a time until I become aware of a shallow breathing coming from beneath the bridge. I rise to my feet and hunching down, crawl under the heavy wooden crossbeams to investigate. It is damp and dark under the bridge, and although it takes some time for my eyes to adjust, I grope my way towards the strange locking breaths that seem to emanate from a fringe of rushes along the bank. I lean down, and there, lying on her side in the shadowy reeds, I find a small, pale she-dragon, sick and close to dying. Her eyes are closed, and when I put my hand to her neck to feel for life, Her armoured eyelids roll back to reveal startling orange slits. She looks at me for a moment and then closes her eyes. There is a faintest discernible pulse. I kneel down and wrap the dragon in the suit of my jacket. Then with some difficulty carry her up the slope to the majestic Fairmont Hotel McDonald in Edmonton. Mythology bubbles up within me and all about me. The dragon lies on the bed in my suite of Fairmont. Her breath is so shallow as to be almost non-existent. Sometimes her breathing catches and stops, and I think she has died, and I panic and wring my hands, and then there is an odd clicking noise in her throat, and her delicate respirations begin again. I have turned out the lights as the brightness seems to agitate her. A phone rings repeatedly in the room next door. I turn on the flashlight app on my iPhone and examine her. A little squamous Dracania with intricate trace markings curling about her body. On the webbed back foot is a long bone spur used to poison her attackers. Her sexual organ is a neat blue-rimmed fold, and the waxy skin on her belly under the light of the iPhone has an opaline sheen that is heartbreaking. Everything is happening and has happened and will happen again. Everything that exists has always existed and will continue to exist. Memory is imagined. It is not real. Don't be ashamed of its need to create. It is the loveliest part of your heart. Myth is the true history. Don't let them tell you that there are no monsters. Don't let them make you feel stupid just because you're happy to play down in the dark with your flashlight. The mythical world depends on you and your tolerance for the absurd. Be strong, my darling ones, and believe. And you too, I say to my dragon. Be strong, I say, and I cover her body with a thin blanket. Be strong, I say, and there in my underwear I press my ear to the dragon's slow-moving side and adhere to the distant argument of her breath. After a time, in a low whisper, I address my wife in the hope that she may hear all those many miles across the sea. Hang in there, I say to my wife. Be strong, I say. There are 1 million of us all over the world breathing like you tonight. Thank you. What do you want to know?
Okay, I got one over here, Senator.
We have people who
I got a microphone right here.
This is going so amazingly smoothly.
First of all, hello again. Last time I saw you was at Town Hall. I bring you greetings from Caroline, your typewriter.
Oh, did you get that?
She's still in good use.
Oh, that's her name?
Her name's Caroline, that's what she told me. So she's quite happy. And there's sheaves of paper next to her, and she writes different things depending on the texture of the paper. Onion skin versus construction paper versus newspaper. Depending on the thickness of it, it determines what comes out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm very happy for her.
Anyway, well, you're talking very much about how a gesture or something small that your wife might have said or something your children might have come across inspires you. Has there ever been repercussions from your family or a friend feeling that you gave something away that was too private? And how do you decide when that's usable and no, that's too tender? Especially around your children or something intimate your wife.
I don't really write too much about my children. They're actually up there. So they're 14 and suffer from acute embarrassment and people you know, because it's not really the sort of stuff I write about, really. But in regard to Susie, my wife, or friends or whatever, it's, for me, really, it's all bets are off, really, and there's not really anything that doesn't get, doesn't. I mean, you know, if I decide I want to write about it, it just gets written about. Mostly because I'm not in a position to pick and choose about what I write about. I don't write enough. It may seem like a lot of stuff comes, but actually it comes with quite a lot of agony to get the stuff out there in the first place, and I can't be sitting around sort of thinking, is that going to offend somebody? I mean, I've given up writing songs just to piss people off, which I used to do, and there's some quite strong songs that was their intended purpose. But the funny thing really is about people don't really care if the song is nice about them or not about them. It seems to be such a wonderful thing to have a song written about you. You can pretty much get away with anything.
Got a second question right down here.
Good evening. Thank you for being with us here tonight. Last time you were here. Okay, thank you. Last time this year, I had a chance to hear interesting stories when you guys were arrested in the city here, like in the 80s, I think it was.
When I got arrested?
Yeah. Prior to your one of the shows.
I told that here?
Yeah.
I've been here before, right?
Yeah.
I knew it. It was all like, yeah.
My question for you is your connection with the city of New York. Like when you come here, you have certain memories that you evoke. I know that you have friends, dear friends here. Friends. I know that you lived here for a short time, right?
I don't know.
I read this biography book that said that you like living in the early 90s. Anyway, what does New York mean to you?
I've actually got really good friends in New York, and that's what it really means to me. Actually, is seeing those people. It's obviously not the New York that it used to be. It's a whole different thing. You can't even come to New York and get like mugged anymore, and come back and say, "Hey, I was mugged in New York," or any of that sort of stuff. So that you know, and there's a lot about that kind of New York that was pretty amazing to be around. But you know, I love the city, and yeah, you know, yeah. Is that enough? No. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I don't know. Look, you know, I mean, I love New York, and I love to spend time here. So I don't know what else to say about it. Really.
Did you have a chance to see you with the band here?
Yeah. At the end of the year, actually. It's, I won't go. Yes. It's not the Bad Seeds though, but it's Nick Cave solo, except that it's with members of the Bad Seeds.
I have another question here.
This might be a piggyback sort of off the last one, but I'm kind of fascinated by your time in Berlin and Germany. And this might be a weird question, but if you could time travel back, picture the best day during that time, and pick 3 elements of that day.
Who was saying this? Okay. No, I can't do that.
Shakespeare's autobiographical pieces?
It's, you know, I mean, the character of Bunny Munro is a character that's very close to my heart, and I feel like I understand very well. Not that I did the stuff that he did. Actually, doesn't even really do that much stuff, Bunny Munro. A lot of stuff goes on in his head, and that kind of view of the world, I think, has plagued me over the years, actually. So it's a cautionary tale about that kind of thinking about things, and about obsessive thinking about things, and the dangers of that, really. I'm not necessarily talking about sex here with Bunny Munro, but that kind of giving everything over to obsessively to a particular thing, and letting other things slide. And I'm more talking about work, I guess, in some ways. Yep.
Hello. I had a massive phobia of you as a child, but I'm okay now.
Me too.
I think it was all learning. Anyway, you've spoken a lot in the past about the importance of knowing your limitations creatively and about having collaborators in the context of songwriting. And I was wondering, in what ways is it different when you're writing prose or when you're writing novels? What's the difference between a good bandmate and a good editor?
Oh, wow! I never been asked that before. An editor is an amazing thing that I never knew about. I obviously didn't know about that really with And the Ass for the Angel, and then with Bunny Munro, I had this one, and the Sick Bag Song, this wonderful guy, Francis Bickmore, who edits the books, who allows everything pretty much to run, but has some wonderful big edits that he knocked out 3 chapters in a row of Bunny Munro that just sort of slammed the whole thing together and suddenly it made it like such a much better book. So I don't get any of that stuff, lyric writing, from anybody other than Francis Bickmore when I'm writing a book, who's employed to do that. My band members don't go there with lyrics. I wish they would sometimes. You know, I wish there was some engagement, but a sort of precedent has been set over the years where my band members don't talk about the lyrics. They don't go, hey, that's cool, or they just don't really say anything. And so it's quite difficult to know, you know. The problem with songwriting is you never know. So you can spend weeks writing a lyric and think that, like, you know, and honing it and getting it great, and on the page it's fantastic, and then you go and sing it and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work as a sung thing. It's overworked, it's, you know, and some other thing you've tossed off in a few minutes ends up being the mercy seat, you know, or something like that, right? You just don't know. And that's the sort of terror of songwriting for me. And the band are completely useless in to being like, no, that's not good, or whatever. One time I wrote a song called pinched this title from this classical song that I can't remember. It's called Sheep May Safely Graze, which I wrote for my newborn son, not one of these ones. And it was about, don't worry, you know, sheep may safely graze, the alligators can come, but I'll protect you, and all of this sort of stuff, right? And Blixer came over and he put his arm around me and he sort of said, I think we can save the world from this one. That was the only time. And thank God.
One right here.
a very difficult question to answer because I don't know. I mean, I'm plagued with doubts about the whole thing anyway, so it's a difficult question for me to answer that because I don't feel like the guy that you're actually describing. So, I have a kind of general sort of low-level pride towards the back catalogue, but it's not something that I kind of like. I did this thing, this Ginsberg tribute night actually that Hal Wilner did in LA a few days ago and played a couple of songs there. And this guy came in who was like 10, 20 years older than me. He looked fucking great. He still dyed his hair black and he's looked really good. And he said his name and I'm like, he kind of bounded into the band room and said his name. And then he said, I wrote Sugar Sugar. And I'm like, wow. Man. And suddenly it was, this guy had this incredible pride about writing this song, and he was really proud, and that's how he actually introduced himself. And I really envied that about this guy, and wished that I could kind of go, I'm Nick, I wrote the verses. But I just don't feel the way that they're describing it.
I have a question over here.
Hello, good evening. A little bit shallow, but I don't care.
That's good.
Yeah. You tend to wear the same pieces of jewelry, and I'm curious about them. So, are there any stories behind them, or?
Yep.
Maybe we know them.
Nope. Well, this one doesn't come off. This is my wedding ring. And this one was given to me by a boy who had cancer. His father gave it to me. He died many, many, many years ago. And it's just on there for the duration. Not so much for the boy, although that was very sad, but I just can't get it off. And yeah. And this is just a little thing.
Hi, what aspects of American culture have you come to love the most, and what do you think is really strange about America?
What I like about America is all the things that a lot of things that I'm against as a liberal kind of guy, like guns and the death penalty and all of these sorts of things. I just kind of, with America, you just go, oh. It's kind of what it is. And that's the thing that I kind of love about this country that I was talking about, the contradictions. And, I'm just constantly baffled by the place in the best possible way, and I don't know what else to say. I find it baffling and beautiful and all things really.
We do too.
Yeah, you should. You never know. I never know when I come to Australia, to America, what I'm going to get, what it's going to be like. And it's always kind of different, and it's always an experience. The people are different. The people are open there's a kind of hunger with the people about things that kind of old Europe in many ways just doesn't have in the same way. Or living in the UK, for example. There isn't that kind of hunger, I guess, and so it's very infectious to be here and to be a part of that sometimes.
Thank you.
Hi, well, I'm from Brazil, and I know that you had a history there.
Yeah.
And me and I speak for all my friends, we wonder if someday you will come back in there, to maybe on tour or something? Well, is it planned?
Yeah, it's being talked about actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I did just, I lived there for 3 years. I fell in love there. I've got a Brazilian kid. Yeah, that's very good. But something happened over there with the whole thing, kind of collapsed, not the kid, and it was just sort of difficult to go back there for a while, and I'm just kind of getting over that hurdle before we go back there on tour.
Okay, well, we'll be...
It's time to get over it, really.
Yeah. Just get over it. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
Another question.
Hello. Hey, Nick. I listen to a lot of your music, and I create a lot of, I'm inspired by it, and I create a lot of Nick Cave artwork, and I was wondering if I could give you something tonight. Nick Cave themed artwork.
Yeah, sure. I hope it fits in my suitcase.
I hope so too. If not, I'd be happy to ship it to you. And I drive a lot, and I listen to a lot of your music in the car, and if you ever want to talk to someone about lyrics, at 5 o'clock, give me a call.
Well, that's very kind of you. Look, it's got a lot of things in here.
There's a lot of things in there.
That's really, thank you very much for that.
There's a Mercy soup can.
Into the,
if you look inside.
The moustache guy.
Yes, thank you.
The magnetic moustache.
Yes, that's me, thank you.
The iron filings with the Nick Cave thing.
Yeah. I'm glad you got it.
Okay, I won't go through everything.
Okay, that's fine. The soup can's good. Look inside.
Nick Cave Mercy Soup. That's good. Thank you.
I'm half Brazilian, and it's kind of related to what she said. When you're in the moment of being creative and you have the agony of getting it out, and maybe you have saudade, which a lot of people in the audience don't know.
It's a hard question.
It's a Brazilian term for longing that doesn't even necessarily go to a place or a thing. It's just like a...
Undefined.
Yeah. But it can be a cloud of like overwhelming, I can't do shit in this moment. So when you have that moment and you know you want to create, I mean, do you go out and do jumping jacks or do you...
Well, I just do what anybody else does who is, does art and stuff. I just do the work and produce the stuff, It's not some magic thing or that I'm especially gifted at even. It's just that I do have the capacity to apply myself.
To start off on a little down note, the song Black Hair, I know it was written about PJ Harvey. Could have been written about my friend Genevieve, who yesterday was the anniversary of her death. I wish she was here, to sit next to me. She would have loved this. So I just wanted to, that song means a lot to me because of the connection that I have with her. And a quick question about the availability of your books. The Ask for the Angel has been out of print forever. Sick Bag Song is not apparently coming out in the United States.
No, that's not true.
Okay. Before, if I could, did you lose any parts of the Sick Bag Song by using the sick bags for their original purpose?
No. That's a wide range of emotions went through me listening to your question. The book is not sold in bookshops. It's you have to go on a website to buy the Sick Bag Song. This is a innovative cutting-edge idea that was thought up by my publisher. Whether it's a good idea remains to be seen, but at least at the moment, it's only sold on the Sick Bag website. No one else has it, and we shall see how that goes. But no, I don't. I never was thrown up in a sick bag.
I have a question back here.
In the nosebleeds. Hey, your catalog is so huge. I mean, almost I think 25 plus years. So when you go on tour now, it's kind of a quick two-part question. You have old songs like "I'll Jump the Devil" and comparatively speaking to stuff that you've done now. How do you go about choosing songs to play? And also, I've in 20,000 Days, you talked about Johnny Cash and American country artists being so prevalent, but also I know the Stooges, Johnny Thunders, the Velvets. When did in your life those people kind of come into your knowledge of?
Okay. First of all, we are doing with this solo thing where we do Black Hair and we do Up Jump the Devil. So that's just a by the by. And with something. Hey, you guys. Yeah. So I don't know. It just depends on. There's certain songs that we usually play, and then we try and get as much stuff that we don't usually play in there as possible. In terms of choosing songs. Now I've forgotten the other. Oh, and the Stooges and stuff. When punk rock happened, really. I started listening to that sort of stuff. I was really under I had an elder brother who listened to a lot of English progressive music, and that's basically what I grew up listening to. All of that stuff, like, Procol Harum, Jethro Tull. That was, and then I broke away from him with punk rock, I guess, and those sort of acts.
Other questions?
Hey, yeah. On the subject of collaborations, Chuck Sperry did some art for your last tour and some posters for you, and I heard you guys had a chance to talk. I was wondering what it was like to have someone else design something that represented your tour, your work, and what you found in him that really clicked, because it's a very nice collaboration.
Yeah, he's great. That guy, he's a great guy, and he designed a skateboard, a Nick Cave skateboard, which was great. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Paul. No, my kids do that. Not that one. But they do. They skates.
I have a question.
Hi. I'm not going to stand up because I'm nervous. I recently watched the Roland S. Howard documentary. And
Yeah.
I'm just curious as to what kind of relationship you may or may not have maintained with him, and was there ever any discussion or possible collaboration with him over the years?
Yeah, off and on. He actually played on some Bad Seed stuff, Roland. That we were very close. Then the birthday party broke up, and there was a lot of talk about this kind of feud between me and Roland, which actually never really existed. He wanted to play his songs, and I wanted to play my songs, and I had problems singing his songs, and so there was a kind of conflict that happened within the birthday party around that. But as far as us as being friends, we were always friends, and it was very sad that he died. And he was the great Australian. He was the sound of Australia at that time. And we've had him play on things, so we were always close.
I have questions.
I don't know if what I'm supposed to be doing. Is this right? Is it supposed to be any time? Or actually asking.
You're fine.
Is it all right, or are you all sitting there going, fucking hell? Okay.
Hi, I just have a question. You are so iconic and so important to so many people, and you span generations of fan bases, very similar to like Morrissey and things like that.
Fuck off. I don't know how to answer that question.
You should owe me an answer.
Are there iconic? Are there artists that I hold up here? Yeah. Leonard Cohen to me is someone that's and all of these kinds of people, Bob Dylan and Neil Young and Van Morrison, and these sort of people were people that changed the whole game plan for me when I was young, so they are that way to me. There's a piece I'll read when I go, or I'm going to read a little bit at the end, which continues the theme that runs through the Sick Bag song about exactly what we're talking about, the people that have meant so much, and the Sick Bag song is in a way sort of saying thank you in a way to these people, and but for sure, yeah, there are those people.
Got a question here on the left, right here. Use the microphone.
Why did you just throw like 48 books?
I can't hear you.
Why did you only bring 48 books? Exactly. You saw that very quickly. A lot of us are just...
Oh, really?
Yeah. Why did you just bring like 48 books? Only 48. We were online together.
Early bird.
Well, you can just get it on the fucking website. Oh, they're not signed?
Can I get the ones that are waiting?
If you give me your address, I'll send you a signed sick bag.
Give me some birthday.
My manager is here somewhere. Can you deal with that, mate? I don't know why there's only that many books here. It seems ridiculous, but it probably has a financial ramification somewhere. Maybe they're expensive to get over here, and so, is that right? Oh, that's my manager, isn't it? Yeah. So they cost so much to get from the place because they're not actually made in America that we lose money if we sell them. Something like that, is that right? So we're trying to encourage people to go to the sickbagsong.com.
Oh, God.
Right.
Stand up.
Is that it?
Stand up. Stand up.
Okay.
The last passage that you read was beautiful, and I fell in love with this dragon. And I haven't read the book yet because it just arrived, but does the dragon live? Can you tell us?
No. I can't tell you that.
And then
the dragon dies in Seattle. No, Vancouver. Well, Edmonton, Vancouver.
And does Susie pick up the phone?
That's you have to read the book to find out. Okay. Is that it?
one more.
One more question. So, you mentioned Leonard Cohen, and I saw him 2 years ago. He's still playing. Are you going to play like in your older age, or are you just going to stop in one moment?
I'm already playing in my older age.
No, it's really old. Okay, I'm almost 70. I cannot do it anymore. Or
it's it's something I really enjoy doing. It's like absolute blast. So for me, it's never been an issue as yet. I still can do what I want to do. I'm not.
And you still look good, baby.
Woo!
Okay. So we were talking before about the idea of creative vampirism, and it had something to do with the Brian Ferry story, and the idea that I took from Brian that day at the pool. And this is a section from the New Orleans section. That's continues on with that idea. Through the book, I'm always spending a lot of time lying around with the muses. There's 9 muses, and one of them is Calliope, and we sort of hang out and stuff together. And so that's just the night. This is New Orleans. The night in the Sinesta on Bourbon Street. The hours passed like funerals till the dreaded 4. The naked, tangled muses did softly snore, and one by one rubbed their tired eyes to stir, as an awful nasal drone emanated from a radio next door. Is that who I think it is? Shouted Calliope in dread. It's Bob Dylan, I said for sure. And with a groan the muses hung their beset collective head. Stop me if you've heard this one before. I stepped gently from my trailer into a ferocious storm. It was 1998 at Glastonbury on Muddy Worthy Farm. The artist trailers were arranged in a neat square that boxed in a vast flooded slough. Thunder crashed. It was mythic Greek. You could drown a cow. I saw through the veil of pelting rain a trailer door open on the other side of the bog and a hooded figure step out. He climbed into a little boat and with a bag of wind under his arm blew himself across that ghastly moat. Lost in the dark reaches of his hood, the stranger decanted from his boat and stood before me, yet I recognized in slow motion the beak, the squint, the fluffy chin, and all the world ground to a halt to accommodate this thought. It's him. Then slowly extending from his sleeve, a cold white satin hand took mine. Hey, I like what you do, he said to me. I like what you do, too, I replied. I nearly died. Then his hand retracted up his sleeve, and Bob Dylan turned and took his leave, disappearing back into the rain. But wait, Calliope, my impatient muse, the tale does not end here. I walked back inside my trailer on that peculiar day, feeling suddenly drained of blood, of life, and weak, so emptied out I could fade away, which is basically what I did for 3 whole years. A dull, paralyzing torpor hung over me, an occasional note plucked from a disconsolate piano, the odd word scratched into my teary notebook, then scratched out again. Each night I dreamed of that slow vampiric hand extending from its awful cuff. Stop now, says Calliope, rising to her feet. Let it go. You are completely enough. Soon after I noticed, just in passing, Bob Dylan released Love and Theft, which got an A+ rating in the Village Voice. Bob was back on top. Meanwhile, I released Nocturama, which was a flop. In the Royal Sinester on Bourbon Street, we closed our eyes as the morning woke and its tail began to wag, and just before we all fell back to sleep to softly snore, someone kindly turned the radio off next door. Thank you very much.